Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and terrifying stories in Star Wars legends, the complete saga of Darth Zannah, the first true apprentice of the Rule of Two, who would become one of the most dangerous Sith masters in galactic history. Before we begin this incredible journey, make sure to hit that like button if you're ready for tonight's epic adventure into the dark side. And don't forget to subscribe if you love these deep dives into Star Wars lore. Drop a comment and let me know what part of the world you're listening from. I love seeing our global community come together for these epic tales. Now get comfortable. Maybe dim those lights, settle into your favorite listening spot, and prepare yourself for a story that spans decades of manipulation, power, and the ultimate betrayal that defined the Sith for 1,000 years. Picture this: a massive explosion tears across the planet Ruusan. In a single instant, nearly every Force user within 1,000 kilometers simply dies. Jedi Masters who had fought for decades, Sith Lords who commanded armies, Brotherhood of Darkness leaders, all reduced to nothing but dust and echoes in the Force. This is the Thought Bomb, a weapon so terrible that it consumes the very life essence of those touched by the Force. But in the smoking ruins of this devastation, two figures survive. One is Darth Bane, the last surviving Sith Lord, architect of the Thought Bomb itself, standing alone among the corpses of his former allies and enemies. The other is a 10-year-old street child named Rain, clutching the lifeless body of her best friend, her mind shattered by witnessing horrors no child should ever see. What Rain doesn't know yet is that her survival wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. The same dark power that killed everyone around her is the reason she's still breathing. The Force in its most twisted form has chosen her, and standing in the distance, Darth Bane senses something extraordinary in this broken little girl. Something that will make her the perfect weapon. Within hours, Rain will be dead. In her place will stand Darth Zannah, apprentice to the most dangerous Sith Lord in 1,000 years. But here's the terrifying truth that even Bane doesn't fully understand yet. He isn't training just another apprentice. He's creating the very person who will one day destroy him. Because that's the rule of two: master and apprentice. One to embody power, one to crave it. And when the student finally surpasses the teacher, only the strongest survives. This is the story of how a homeless child became a master of Sith sorcery, so powerful that she could drive entire armies insane with illusions. How she learned to twist minds like putty and bend reality itself to her will. How she spent 20 years pretending to be the loyal apprentice while secretly planning the most elaborate betrayal in Sith history. But most terrifying of all, this is the story of how Darth Zannah proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a lightsaber or Force lightning. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's the ability to smile at your master for decades while plotting his destruction in the shadows of your mind. The galaxy thinks the Sith are extinct. They have no idea that their greatest threat is just beginning. Tonight, we uncover the complete story of the woman who would ensure the Sith's return to power and set in motion the events that would eventually destroy the Jedi Order itself. So let's journey back to that moment on Ruusan when a little girl named Rain took her first steps into darkness and began the path that would make her one of the most feared beings in the galaxy. The year is 1000 BBY, and the galaxy bleeds. For over 1,000 years, the new Sith Wars have torn apart star systems, reduced entire civilizations to ash, and turned once prosperous worlds into graveyards. This is the final chapter of that ancient conflict, playing out on a small, unremarkable planet called Ruusan. Ruusan should have been paradise. Rolling hills covered in purple grass stretch toward crystalline lakes that reflect twin suns. Ancient forests whisper with life, and the very air thrums with Force energy so pure that sensitive beings can feel it from orbit. But war has transformed this beautiful world into a nightmare of trenches, bombed-out cities, and refugee camps that stretch beyond the horizon. In the bombed ruins of what was once a thriving city, a gang of children fights for survival. They call themselves the Bouncers, led by a tough 14-year-old named Tomcat. These aren't ordinary street kids. These are war orphans who have watched their families die, their homes burn, their entire worlds collapse around them. They've learned to steal, to fight, to kill when necessary. Because in this hellscape, children who can't adapt don't live to see their next birthday. Among the Bouncers is a 10-year-old girl they call Rain, small for her age, with dark hair that hangs in tangles and clothes that are more patches than original fabric. She seems like just another refugee child. But Rain is different. She has reflexes that are just a little too fast, instincts that are just a little too sharp. When danger approaches, she knows it before anyone else. When the other children play games of chance, she wins far more often than probability should allow. Rain doesn't understand what makes her special. She only knows that she loves her makeshift family with fierce loyalty, especially Bug, a boy 2 years older than her who found her half dead in the ruins and nursed her back to health. To Rain, Bug isn't just a friend. He's the brother she never had. The one person in this entire war-torn galaxy who makes her feel safe. The Bouncers have carved out a territory in the bombed remains of a residential district. Their headquarters is an old-school building with half its roof blown off, and walls covered in scorch marks from blaster fire. Here they plan their raids, divide their stolen supplies, and huddle together during the long, cold nights when the sound of distant artillery never quite fades away. Above their small struggles, a larger conflict rages. Lord Kain's Brotherhood of Darkness, 1,000 Sith Lords united in their hatred of the Jedi, has made Ruusan their final battlefield. They command armies of dark-side cultists, mercenaries, and conscripted civilians. Opposing them is the Army of Light, led by Jedi Master Hoth and filled with the Republic's greatest champions. For months, these two forces have clashed across Ruusan's surface, lightsabers painting the night sky in brilliant colors, Force powers tearing apart the landscape, Sith lightning splitting trees, Jedi telekinesis hurling boulders like toys. The very planet groans under the weight of so much concentrated dark and light side energy. But something has changed in the last few days. The bombing has stopped. The sounds of battle have grown distant. Refugees whisper rumors in a dozen different languages. Some say the Jedi are winning. Others claim the Sith have discovered a terrible new weapon. Still others believe both sides are preparing for one final apocalyptic confrontation. Rain doesn't care about Jedi or Sith. She cares about finding enough food to keep her family fed, and enough clean water to keep them healthy. She cares about avoiding the roving bands of deserters who would kill children for their shoes. She cares about the growing strangeness in her dreams. Visions of darkness and screaming that she doesn't understand but that leave her shaking and cold every morning. What Rain doesn't know is that her dreams aren't random nightmares. They're glimpses of the future, fragments of a destiny that will reshape the galaxy. Forces beyond her comprehension are already in motion. In a hidden cave system beneath Ruusan's surface, Darth Bane, the most brilliant and ruthless Sith Lord in generations, is putting the finishing touches on a weapon that will destroy the Brotherhood of Darkness and leave him as the sole surviving Dark Lord of the Sith. The Thought Bomb is ready. Ancient Sith alchemy combined with terrifying dark side rituals has created a weapon that feeds on Force energy itself. When detonated, it will create a chain reaction that kills every Force-sensitive being within its blast radius. Jedi, Sith, Anyone touched by the Force will simply die, their life essence consumed to fuel the weapon's terrible hunger. Bane believes he can survive because he won't be in the blast zone. He believes he can rebuild the Sith Order according to his vision, the rule of two, one master, one apprentice. No more infighting, no more weakness, just pure Sith power concentrated in two individuals who will grow stronger with each generation. What Bane doesn't expect is that his perfect plan will be altered by the survival of one small girl whose connection to the Force runs deeper than even she knows. In just hours, the thought bomb will detonate. The old Sith Order will die, and from its ashes will rise something far more dangerous. The true Sith, beginning with a master who survived through cunning and an apprentice who survived through power she doesn't yet understand. Reyne's childhood is about to end forever. Reyne wakes to the sound of silence, and that terrifies her more than any explosion ever could. For months, the constant rumble of distant warfare has been the soundtrack of her existence. Artillery fire, screaming engines, the clash of lightsabers, echoing across valleys. But now, nothing. Even the birds have stopped singing. She finds Bug sitting by their makeshift window, staring out at the purple dawn sky. His face carries that look she's learned to recognize, the expression of someone who knows death is coming but refuses to run from it. The other bouncers are already awake, whispering among themselves with the nervous energy of children who have survived too much. Something's happening today. Bug tells her without turning around. The deserters came through an hour ago. Running scared, said both armies are pulling back to the same valley. He pauses, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. They're going to end this today. All of it. Reyne feels something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear. Exactly. Something deeper. Like the planet itself is holding its breath, waiting for a moment that will change everything forever. She's been having the dreams again. Visions of white light that burns everything it touches. Screaming voices that suddenly go silent. A darkness so complete it seems to swallow sound itself. The bouncers spend their morning doing what they always do. Rationing their meager supplies, checking their hiding spots, planning their next scavenging run. But there's a desperation to their routine now, as if they're trying to hold on to normalcy while the world prepares to collapse around them. Tomcat announces they're moving closer to the final battlefield. Not to fight, he insists. Just to watch, to see history being made. Reyne wants to argue, wants to tell them about the growing dread that's been eating at her for days. But Bug is excited, talking about witnessing the end of the war, and she can't bring herself to crush his hope. They pack their few belongings and begin the trek toward the valley where both armies have gathered. The landscape they travel through tells the story of 1,000 years of conflict. Crater lakes where cities once stood, forests reduced to fields of blackened stumps, ancient monuments shattered by weapons that turn stone to glass. As they get closer, Reyne's unease grows stronger. The air itself feels wrong, charged with an energy that makes her skin crawl and her teeth ache. Other refugees stream past them, but they're all moving in the opposite direction, running away from whatever's about to happen. Only the bouncers and a handful of other scavenger groups are foolish enough to move toward the danger. They reach a hill overlooking the valley just as the sun reaches its peak. Below them spreads a sight that will haunt Reyne for the rest of her very long life. Two massive armies facing each other across a field that was once farmland. On one side, the Brotherhood of Darkness, their black banners snapping in the wind, dark side energy crackling visibly around their Sith lords like purple lightning. On the other side, the Army of Light, their lightsabers creating a wall of blue and green radiance, their Force presence washing over the battlefield like a tide of hope. Bug grabs her hand. his excitement palpable. Rain. We're going to see the end of the war. The end of everything that's been hunting us. After today, we can finally go home. But Rain isn't watching the armies anymore. She's staring at a cave entrance halfway up the valley wall where something ancient and terrible is stirring. Through the Force sensitivity she doesn't yet understand, she can feel it building, a weapon that feeds on the very energy that gives life to the galaxy. The battle begins with a sound like thunder that never stops. Lightsabers clash in showers of sparks. Force lightning splits the air. Jedi Masters leap impossible distances, while Sith Lords tear chunks of earth from the ground and hurl them like meteors. It's beautiful and terrible and completely beyond anything Rain has ever imagined. But then she feels it. The weapon in the cave is ready. She tries to scream a warning, but no sound comes out. The terror is too pure, too absolute. She can only watch as a sphere of white energy erupts from the hillside and begins expanding across the battlefield. Everything it touches simply stops existing. Not destroyed. Not killed. Erased. Jedi Masters mid-leap fall silent. Sith Lords channeling devastating power crumple like empty clothes. The very sound of battle cuts off as if someone has muted the entire world. Bug is still holding her hand when the wave reaches them. She feels his grip tighten for just an instant, sees his eyes widen in confusion rather than fear. Then his hand goes slack and he topples forward, his body hitting the ground with a soft thud that sounds impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Rain should be dead too. Every instinct tells her she should have died with the rest of them. But something inside her, something dark and hungry and alive, has wrapped itself around her like armor. The weapon's energy washes over her and moves on, leaving her untouched but fundamentally changed. She sits alone on the hill for hours, cradling Bug's body, staring out at a valley filled with thousands of corpses. The silence is complete now. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even her own heartbeat sounds muffled, as if the explosion has damaged something basic about how sound travels through the air. That's when she sees him. A figure walking through the field of the dead, moving with purpose among the bodies. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing armor that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. She should run. Every survival instinct she's developed over 10 hard years of life is screaming at her to run. But she can't move, because she recognizes him from her dreams. The man who will take everything she is and forge it into something new, something terrible, something powerful beyond imagination. Darth Bane has found his apprentice. Bane approaches slowly, his footsteps, the only sound in a world gone silent. Up close he's even more terrifying than in Rain's nightmares. Scars crisscross his face like a map of old battles. His eyes burn with an intensity that seems to look straight through her. "You survived," he says, and his voice carries the weight of absolute certainty, not surprise, not curiosity. Statement of fact, as if her survival was inevitable, planned, part of some larger design she's too small to understand. Rain wants to speak, to demand answers, to scream at him for the massacre she's just witnessed. But the words stick in her throat. Some primitive part of her brain recognizes that she's in the presence of an apex predator, something so far beyond her that even breathing too loudly might be a mistake. Bane kneels beside Bug's body, studying the boy's peaceful expression with detached interest. Your friend was Force-sensitive, weak, untrained, but sensitive nonetheless. That's why the thought bomb took him. He looks at Rain with those burning eyes. But not you. The dark side protected you because it has plans for you. He stands and extends one massive hand toward her. I am Darth Bane, last of the Sith. You are going to become something greater than you ever imagined possible. Or you're going to die, trying. Rain stares at his outstretched hand for what feels like hours, but is probably only seconds. She thinks about Bug, about Tomcat and the other bouncers, about every person she's ever cared about lying dead in that valley below. She thinks about the hunger she's always felt, the anger that sits like a stone in her chest whenever life treats her unfairly. When she takes his hand, she feels power flow between them like electricity. Not pleasant power, dark, hungry power that whispers promises about strength and revenge and the ability to make sure she never has to watch helplessly while people she loves die again. Good, Bane says. Rain dies here with the rest of them. You are Darth Zannah now. Say it. Darth Zannah. The name feels strange on her tongue, like speaking in a language she's never learned but somehow understands. Again with conviction. Darth Zannah. Stronger this time. More certain. Excellent. Your first lesson begins now. Bane leads her away from the battlefield toward his ship. A sleek black vessel hidden in a canyon several kilometers from the devastation. As they walk, he begins her education in Sith philosophy with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. The Jedi teach that the Force flows through all living things, that it should be used for knowledge and defense, weak-minded garbage. The Force is power, raw and unlimited. It belongs to those strong enough to claim it, and wise enough to use it properly. He pauses at the edge of a crater where some ancient battle was fought. The Brotherhood of Darkness believed strength came from numbers. 1,000 Sith Lords working together. They were fools. True Sith power comes from concentration, from focus. Two beings channeling the full might of the dark side with no dilution, no compromise. Zannah listens with the desperate attention of someone learning a new language of survival. Every word Bane speaks feels like a key unlocking doors in her mind she didn't know existed. The anger she's carried her entire life suddenly has direction, purpose, potential. At the ship, her real training begins. Bane shows her how to feel the Force flowing through her body, how to recognize its whispers and commands. He teaches her the basic lightsaber forms, though it quickly becomes clear she lacks the physical strength for heavy combat. Her reflexes are excellent, her instincts sharp, but she's small and will likely always be small. Disappointing. Bane says after watching her struggle with a training saber for an hour. But not unexpected. Physical prowess is only one path to power. He retrieves a holocron from his personal collection, an ancient pyramid that glows with sickly purple light when activated. The hologram that emerges shows a woman in elaborate robes, her face marked by intricate tattoos that seem to move in the flickering light. Darth Ande, one of the most feared Sith Lords of the ancient era. She conquered entire systems without ever drawing her lightsaber in personal combat. Her weapon was the mind itself. Illusion, manipulation, the ability to make reality bend to her will. The hologram demonstrates techniques that make Zannah's breath catch in her throat. Armies of soldiers turning on each other, convinced their own allies are enemies. Entire populations driven mad by visions of horror too intense to bear. Force illusions so perfect they can kill through belief alone. This will be your path, Bane tells her. Sith sorcery, the power to twist thoughts like clay and bend minds like metal, far more elegant than crude displays of lightning and telekinesis. Over the following days, they travel to ancient Sith strongholds hidden throughout the galaxy. Abandoned temples on dead worlds where the dark side still echoes through crumbling stone corridors. Secret vaults containing knowledge the Jedi believe lost forever. Places where reality feels thin. where the boundary between thought and manifestation grows fragile. In each location, Zannah discovers pieces of her heritage, techniques developed by Sith sorceresses thousands of years before her birth, meditations that open the mind to darker currents in the Force, rituals that allow consciousness itself to become a weapon. But she also begins to understand something Bane hasn't explicitly told her yet. This training isn't just about making her powerful. It's about preparing her for a very specific role in a very specific relationship, master and apprentice, teacher and student, until the day comes when the student must surpass the teacher or die trying. The rule of two isn't about partnership. It's about evolution through conflict. And somewhere in the back of her mind, 10-year-old Zannah begins planning for a war that might not come for decades. 3 years into her training, Zannah believes she understands her place in the universe. She is the perfect apprentice to the perfect master. Bane has given her everything she never knew she wanted: power, purpose, a destiny that stretches across the galaxy. Her progress in Sith sorcery has exceeded even his expectations, and she's begun to master techniques that would have taken ancient practitioners decades to develop. She can now cast illusions complex enough to fool multiple targets simultaneously. She's learned to read surface thoughts without detection and implant suggestions so subtle the victim believes they originated naturally. Her Force sensitivity has grown exponentially, fed by years of meditation in dark side nexuses and exposure to forbidden knowledge that would drive weaker minds to madness. Most importantly, she's learned to channel her anger productively. The rage that once consumed her randomly now serves her like a perfectly tuned instrument. Every memory of loss, every moment of helplessness from her childhood has been transformed into fuel for her dark side abilities. Bane seems pleased with her development. He no longer treats her like a child who survived by accident, but as a worthy successor to the Sith legacy. Their relationship has settled into a comfortable rhythm of instruction and obedience, master and student working toward the same goals with perfect understanding. Or so Zannah believes. The realization that something is wrong begins during a mission to retrieve a Sith artifact from a Jedi archive on Coruscant. The plan is simple. Zannah will infiltrate the facility using false identity documents and Force illusions, while Bane monitors from orbit, ready to extract her if complications arise. The mission proceeds flawlessly, too flawlessly. Security systems that should detect Force users remain dormant as she passes. Jedi archivists who should sense dark side corruption chat pleasantly with her fabricated persona. Even the artifact itself, a Sith meditation sphere that should resist anyone not properly attuned, responds to her touch like an old friend. Standing in the archive's deepest vault, holding a weapon that once belonged to Darth himself, Zannah feels a moment of perfect clarity. This isn't the culmination of her training. It's a test, not of her skills, which Bane already knows are formidable, but of her loyalty. Her willingness to remain the faithful apprentice rather than reach for power that might already be within her grasp. The thought disturbs her more than she wants to admit. For 3 years she's assumed her master's goals aligned perfectly with her own. Grow stronger together. Destroy the Jedi together. Rule the galaxy together. But the rule of two isn't about partnership, is it? It's about succession. Inevitable, violent succession. She completes the mission without incident, delivering the artifact to Bane with the same respectful efficiency she's always shown. But something has changed in the dynamic between them. She notices things she missed before. The way he studies her when he thinks she's not paying attention, the subtle probes he incorporates into their training sessions, testing not just her abilities but her ambition. Most tellingly, she begins to sense his own preparations. Bane is growing stronger too. incorporating new techniques into his already formidable arsenal. He's not just training her anymore. He's training himself to face her, because he knows, even if she doesn't want to acknowledge it yet, that she's approaching the threshold where apprentice must challenge master. The false conclusion she draws is that this dynamic is natural, even healthy. Of course, master and student should push each other toward greater heights. Of course, there should be an underlying current of competition. It makes them both stronger, more focused, more worthy of the Sith legacy they're rebuilding together. She tells herself she's content with her role as apprentice. There's still so much to learn, so many techniques to master. Why rush toward a confrontation that might not be necessary for years, perhaps decades? Better to focus on their shared mission of preparing for the eventual return of the Sith to galactic prominence. This comfortable delusion sustains her for months. She throws herself into her studies with renewed vigor, mastering increasingly complex applications of Sith sorcery. She learns to project her consciousness across vast distances, to manipulate probability through subtle force influence, to create illusions so sophisticated they can alter physical reality itself. Bane praises her progress, rewards her achievements, treats her with something approaching paternal pride. Their conversations during long hyperspace jumps feel genuine, even warm. He shares stories from his own apprenticeship, offers insights into Sith philosophy that no holocron could provide, speaks of the future they're building together with apparent sincerity. But beneath the surface of this apparent harmony, both master and apprentice are changing in ways neither fully acknowledges. Zannah's power grows not just in scope, but in confidence. She begins to notice flaws in Bane's techniques, inefficiencies in his approach to certain problems. Small things, barely worth mentioning, but they accumulate like drops of water wearing away stone. Meanwhile, Bane watches his apprentice's development with the pride of a creator and the wariness of someone who knows he's forging the instrument of his own destruction. Every lesson he teaches her brings her closer to the moment when she'll no longer need him. Every technique she masters is one more weapon she could eventually turn against him. Neither speaks of this growing tension directly. They maintain the fiction of perfect master-student harmony, even as they both begin laying groundwork for an eventual confrontation. Zannah starts keeping certain discoveries to herself, exploring paths of knowledge Bane hasn't explicitly approved. Bane begins incorporating anti-sorcery defenses into his own training, preparing for battles fought with illusion and mental manipulation rather than lightsabers and force lightning. The Rule of Two has begun its inevitable work, creating the conflict that will either forge a new generation of Sith strength or destroy them both in the attempt. 5 years have passed since the thought bomb, and Zannah has grown into something the galaxy has never seen before. At 15, she possesses a mastery of Sith sorcery that rivals practitioners who studied for centuries. Her understanding of mental manipulation has evolved beyond simple illusion into something approaching art. She can rewrite memories with surgical precision, implant thoughts so seamlessly they feel like personal revelations, and create psychic constructs complex enough to live independent lives in her victims' minds. Bane has led her to the deepest corners of Sith knowledge during these years. They've explored the tomb worlds of Korriban, where ancient Dark Lords still whisper from beyond death. They've meditated in the cave systems of Dromund Kaddus, where the dark side flows like underground rivers through stone corridors carved by forgotten civilizations. Each location has added layers to her education, revealing techniques that make her previous abilities seem like children's games. The temple on Lihan becomes their primary training ground, a massive pyramid that predates the Rakata Empire by millennia. Here, surrounded by technology that responds to force commands and chambers that amplify dark side energy, Zannah begins exploring the most forbidden aspects of Sith sorcery. She learns to separate her consciousness from her physical form, projecting her awareness across star systems to spy on enemies or influence events from impossible distances. More disturbing still, she discovers her natural affinity for what the ancient texts call essence manipulation, the ability to alter the fundamental nature of living beings through force techniques. She practices on captured animals first, changing their instincts, their fears, their very understanding of reality. A prey species becomes convinced it's an apex predator. A pack hunter forgets how to cooperate with its own kind. The results are fascinating and horrifying in equal measure. Bane watches these developments with complex emotions he's careful not to reveal. Pride in his apprentice's rapid advancement wars with concern about abilities that even he doesn't fully understand. Zannah's connection to the dark side has grown so strong that sometimes she seems to disappear into it completely, becoming something more and less than human for hours at a time. During their philosophical discussions, usually conducted while traveling between systems or meditating in ancient chambers, Bane shares insights that reshape Zannah's understanding of Sith history. The old Empire fell not because the Jedi were stronger, but because the Sith couldn't stop fighting each other. Every generation saw apprentices betray masters before they were truly ready, creating weaker successors who repeated the cycle endlessly. The rule of two breaks this pattern, he explains, while they examine holocrons in the Lihan Temple's deepest vault. Master and apprentice push each other to absolute limits. When the student finally surpasses the teacher, both have achieved their maximum potential. The Sith grow stronger with each generation instead of weaker. Zannah nods, absorbing this wisdom while part of her mind catalogs everything she's learning about Bane's defensive techniques. She's noticed that he's begun incorporating mental shielding exercises into his daily routine, practicing resistance to exactly the sort of attacks she's been perfecting. The realization should disturb her, but instead it fills her with something approaching admiration. He's preparing for their eventual confrontation with the same methodical thoroughness he applies to everything else. Their relationship has evolved during these years into something unique in Sith history. They function as genuine partners in many ways, collaborating on research projects and strategic planning with an efficiency that would be impossible without mutual respect. Yet underneath this cooperation runs a current of inevitable conflict that grows stronger each month. Zannah has begun keeping detailed records of her discoveries, hidden in encrypted files that even Bane can't access. Not because she plans immediate betrayal, but because she's starting to understand that knowledge is the ultimate currency in their relationship. When the time comes to face him, her advantages will be measured in techniques he doesn't know she's mastered, and insights he hasn't realized she's gained. The most significant of these secret discoveries comes during an exploration of the Treyas Academy ruins on Malachor V. In chambers where Darth Treya once taught the philosophy of betrayal, Zannah uncovers techniques for what she begins calling probability manipulation. By understanding the quantum uncertainty that underlies all matter, she can influence chance events through focused dark side meditation. The applications are subtle, but devastating. A rival's weapon jams at the crucial moment. An enemy's ship suffers engine failure during escape. A target makes seemingly random decisions that lead them exactly where she wants them. It's not flashy like force lightning or dramatically visible like telekinesis, but it's perhaps the most powerful ability she's ever developed. More importantly, it's an ability that works best from a distance, over extended periods of time, perfect for someone who prefers patience and planning to direct confrontation. As her capabilities expand, so does her understanding of galactic politics and the challenges facing any future Sith resurgence. The Republic isn't the corrupt, weakened government that the ancient Sith faced. It's a vibrant democracy with strong institutions and popular support. The Jedi aren't complacent guardians resting on past victories. They're actively working to prevent another Sith uprising, investigating rumors and eliminating potential threats wherever they find them. Any return to power will require decades of careful preparation manipulation conducted so subtly that the Republic and Jedi destroy themselves without ever realizing they're under attack. It's the sort of long-term planning that requires absolute patience and complete confidence in one's own abilities. Zannah realizes she possesses both qualities in abundance. More tellingly, she's beginning to suspect that Bane, for all his strengths, might not. His approach to problems tends toward the direct, the immediately forceful. He's a warrior philosopher who conquered the Brotherhood of Darkness through superior strategy and raw power. But the challenges ahead will require different tools, subtler applications of Sith principles. The galaxy doesn't need another Sith conqueror. It needs a Sith infiltrator, someone capable of working within existing systems to corrupt them from within. Someone who can smile while plotting destruction, who can appear harmless while wielding power that could drive entire populations insane. Someone exactly like the person Zannah is becoming. These realizations crystallize during a mission to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant itself. Using probability manipulation and carefully crafted illusions, she walks through the heart of Jedi power completely undetected, studying their security measures and cataloging their weaknesses. The experience fills her with dark satisfaction and growing certainty about her own destiny. Standing in the temple's central chamber surrounded by Jedi who have no idea they're in the presence of a Sith Lord, Zannah understands that she's ready for responsibilities. Bane hasn't offered to share. 7 years after Ruusan, Zannah's education takes an unexpected turn when Bane leads her to the forgotten world of Ambria. Once a nexus of dark side power that rivaled Korriban itself, the planet was supposedly cleansed by Jedi Master Thrawn centuries before. But as their ship descends through atmosphere thick with residual force energy, Zannah realizes that some stains can never be completely removed from the fabric of reality. The landscape they encounter tells a story of battles fought across geological time, crystallized forests, where ancient Sith experiments went wrong, lakes of black water that reflect no light and sustain no life. Most disturbing of all, ruins that seem to shift and change when observed directly, as if the very stones remember their original configurations and struggle to return to them. In the deepest of these ruins, Bane shows her something that reshapes her understanding of Sith history entirely. Wall carvings that predate known civilization, depicting conflicts between Force users that make the wars she studied seem like minor skirmishes. But these aren't random historical records, they're warnings, left by Sith Lords who faced the same choice now confronting every generation trained in the rule of two. Look closely, Bane instructs, his voice carrying an unusual weight as they examine scenes carved in stone that pulses with residual dark energy. Every image tells the same story. Master grows powerful. Apprentice grows ambitious. One destroys the other. The survivor claims victory, but inherits weakness, because they acted from emotion rather than readiness. The carvings show this pattern repeating endlessly. Strong masters killed by apprentices who lacked the discipline to wait for proper timing. Brilliant apprentices destroyed by masters who sensed growing threat but struck too early. Each cycle producing Sith Lords slightly less capable than their predecessors until entire lineages collapsed into irrelevance. But scattered among these cautionary tales are different images. Rare scenes showing successful transitions of power. Masters who recognized when they had taught everything they could. Apprentices who challenged their teachers only after surpassing them completely. These partnerships produced Sith Lords of legendary capability, beings whose power echoed across centuries. Zannah studies these successful examples with obsessive attention to detail. The common factor isn't timing, though that matters. It's not superior technique. Those skills are crucial. The difference lies in understanding the deeper purpose of the rule of two itself, The successful pairs treated their eventual confrontation not as betrayal, but as graduation, the final lesson in a curriculum designed to forge beings capable of conquering the galaxy. That night, camped in ruins where Sith alchemists once practiced their darkest arts, Zannah experiences visions that feel more like recovered memories than dreams. She sees herself as part of an unbroken chain, stretching back to the ancient Sith Empire and forward to futures yet unwritten. Each link in this chain represents a master-apprentice pair, pushing the boundaries of dark side mastery further than the previous generation. But the visions also show her something else. The ultimate purpose of this centuries-long project isn't just about creating powerful individuals. It's about preparing for a cosmic confrontation that will determine whether the dark side or the light side shapes the galaxy's destiny. The Jedi believe they won when they drove the Sith into hiding. They have no idea they simply forced their enemies to evolve beyond recognition. When she shares these insights with Bane, she's surprised by his reaction. Instead of dismissing her visions as apprentice presumption, he nods with the gravity of someone confirming long-held suspicions. The ancient Sith called it the Great Work, he tells her. Each generation adding pieces to a puzzle that won't be completed for centuries. We're not just rebuilding the Sith Order. We're creating something entirely new. A synthesis of everything the dark side has learned through millennia of conflict. Over the following months, their training shifts to encompass this broader perspective. Instead of simply mastering individual techniques, Zannah begins studying the philosophical foundations that connect all Sith knowledge. She learns to see patterns in seemingly unrelated abilities, understanding how ancient battle meditation relates to modern mental manipulation, how Sith alchemy principles apply to probability manipulation. More importantly, she begins to grasp her role as both inheritor and creator. Everything Bane teaches her represents accumulated wisdom from dozens of previous masters, but her own discoveries, particularly in the realm of long-term psychological warfare, are genuinely new contributions to Sith knowledge. When she eventually trains her own apprentice, she'll pass on not just what she learned, but what she created. This realization brings profound changes to how she views her relationship with Bane. The competitive tension that has defined their dynamic for years begins evolving into something more complex. She still plans to surpass him eventually, but now she understands that success means preserving and building upon everything he's taught her, not simply destroying him to claim his position. The shift becomes apparent during a mission to infiltrate a Republic intelligence facility on Chandrila. Working together with perfect coordination, they execute a plan that combines Bane's strategic brilliance with Zannah's mastery of subtle manipulation. She creates probability cascades that ensure their target makes exactly the right mistakes at precisely the right moments, while Bane maintains the broader tactical picture that keeps them ahead of security responses. The mission succeeds so completely that their targets never realize they were infiltrated at all. More importantly, both master and apprentice recognize that they've achieved something neither could have accomplished alone. Their individual strengths have multiplied rather than simply combined, creating capabilities that exceed the sum of their parts. But even as their partnership reaches new heights of effectiveness, both understand that it cannot last forever. The rule of two demands evolution through conflict, and avoiding that confrontation would ultimately weaken them both. The question is no longer whether they'll face each other in combat, but when that moment will serve the greater purpose of Sith advancement. Standing together in the ruins of Ambria as their investigation concludes, master and apprentice share a moment of perfect understanding. They are bound by destiny to become enemies, but that destiny serves a cause greater than either of their individual ambitions. When their time comes, the survivor won't just be claiming victory. They'll be accepting responsibility for carrying the great work forward into its next phase. For now, though, they remain teacher and student, partners in preparation for conflicts that may not unfold for years or even decades. The galaxy believes the Sith are extinct, never suspecting that their greatest threat is patiently growing stronger in the shadows, guided by wisdom accumulated across millennia and focused on goals that extend far beyond personal power. The turning point comes on Dxun, Onderon's demon moon, where the very air writhes with dark side energy and predators that shouldn't exist according to any natural law hunt through forests of carnivorous plants. Bane has brought Zannah here to complete the most dangerous aspect of her training, the technique known as Force Storm Creation, an ability that can tear reality itself apart through concentrated applications of Sith sorcery. For 3 weeks they've prepared, meditating in chambers where Sith spirits whisper instructions from beyond death, studying techniques that have driven lesser practitioners insane. The process requires absolute mastery of mental discipline combined with willingness to channel energies that could destroy the wielder as easily as the target. It's the sort of ability that separates true Sith masters from powerful apprentices. When the moment arrives, Zannah exceeds every expectation Bane has held for her development. The force storm she creates doesn't just tear through the fabric of space. It responds to her will with precision that suggests complete understanding of forces that exist beyond normal reality. She shapes lightning into geometric patterns, creates gravitational distortions that follow mathematical principles, demonstrates control over cosmic energies that most Sith Lords could never dream of achieving. But what truly shocks Bane isn't the raw power she displays. It's the innovation she brings to techniques he thought he understood completely. Zannah has taken ancient Sith methods and evolved them through insights that come from her unique perspective as both sorceress and strategist. Her Force Storm isn't just destruction incarnate. It's a surgical instrument capable of eliminating specific targets while leaving everything around them untouched. More significantly, she's developed these innovations independently, building upon his teachings to create something genuinely new. For the first time in their relationship, Bane realizes he's witnessing abilities that exceed his own understanding. His apprentice isn't just mastering the knowledge he's shared with her, she's transcending it. The implications hit him with the force of physical impact. Every previous generation of Sith had faced the same problem. Masters who taught everything they knew produced apprentices who could at best equal their capabilities. True advancement required students who could surpass their teachers not through superior instruction but through innate genius that transformed existing knowledge into unprecedented applications. Standing in the aftermath of Zannah's demonstration, surrounded by evidence of power that reshapes the fundamental laws of physics, Bane understands that he has achieved something no Sith master has accomplished in centuries. He has trained an apprentice who genuinely exceeds his own capabilities. The rule of two isn't just theoretical anymore. It's working exactly as the ancient architects intended. But this realization brings complex emotions he hadn't anticipated. Pride wars with apprehension as he watches Zannah examine the results of her technique with analytical detachment. She's no longer the broken child he found on Ruusan or even the promising student who showed early aptitude for mental manipulation. She has become something that might genuinely be capable of destroying him. That night, as they make camp in ruins where Freedon Nad once conducted his most forbidden experiments, their conversation carries undercurrents that neither addresses directly. They discuss technique refinements and theoretical applications, but both understand they're really negotiating the terms of their eventual confrontation. Power without wisdom is chaos, Bane observes, watching Zannah practice small-scale applications of the abilities she demonstrated earlier. But wisdom without power is irrelevance. The ancient Sith failed because they couldn't balance these forces properly. Balance suggests equality. Zannah replies, her tone carefully neutral. The rule of two isn't about balance, it's about succession. Each generation must exceed the previous one, or the entire system fails. The exchange seems casual, even philosophical, but both recognize it as something more significant. They're establishing parameters for a relationship that has fundamentally changed. Master and apprentice, they remain. But the traditional hierarchy has become more complex. Bane still possesses decades more experience and broader knowledge of Sith history. But Zannah has demonstrated capabilities that suggest she might already be approaching readiness for the final test. Over the following months, their training shifts subtly but unmistakably. Bane continues teaching, but now he's also learning, studying Zannah's innovations with the humility of someone who recognizes genuine advancement. She shares her discoveries more freely, no longer hiding techniques from someone she sees as a future opponent, but treating him as a colleague in the great work they both serve. This evolution creates an unprecedented dynamic in Sith history. For the first time, master and apprentice are genuinely collaborating as equals while simultaneously preparing for a confrontation that will leave only one of them alive. The tension is extraordinary, but so is the productivity. Together they achieve breakthroughs in dark side application that neither could have reached alone. Most significantly, they begin planning for scenarios that extend beyond their personal relationship. If Zannah survives their eventual duel, how should she select and train her own apprentice? What modifications to traditional Sith methods might further accelerate the Order's development? How can they ensure that the lessons learned through their partnership inform future generations? These discussions reveal just how completely Zannah has internalized the deeper purposes of the Rule of Two. She's not focused on personal power or individual achievement. She's thinking in terms of centuries-long strategies, considering how her decisions will affect Sith Lords who won't be born for generations. The perspective is breathtaking in its scope and chilling in its implications. Bane realizes that his greatest success as a teacher isn't just creating someone capable of surpassing him. He's created someone who truly understands the cosmic importance of what they're attempting. Zannah won't just be a more powerful Sith Lord than him. She'll be a better architect of the Order's ultimate return to galactic prominence. The knowledge fills him with satisfaction and terror in equal measure. He has succeeded beyond his wildest hopes in training a successor worthy of the Sith legacy. But that success also means his own time is drawing to a close, possibly sooner than he had anticipated. Standing together on DXUN's surface, as their latest training cycle concludes, master and apprentice gaze up at stars that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Both understand that they are approaching the culmination of everything they've worked toward together. The question is no longer whether Zannah is ready to claim her destiny, but whether either of them is prepared for what that transition will require. 10 years after Ruusan, Zannah discovers something that changes everything she thought she understood about the Sith and their place in galactic history. The revelation comes not through dramatic confrontation or mystical vision, but through patient archaeological work in the ruins of an ancient Jedi stronghold on Tython, the birthplace of the Force-using orders themselves. Hidden beneath layers of construction dating back 25,000 years, she uncovers chambers that predate both Jedi and Sith as organized philosophies. The walls here tell a different story than the sanitized histories both orders have preserved. They speak of a time when Force users weren't divided into light and dark, but represented a spectrum of approaches to cosmic power that defied simple categorization. More disturbing still are the prophecies carved into crystalline formations that pulse with residual Force energy. These aren't the vague mystical utterances typical of ancient predictions. They're precise, mathematical descriptions of cyclical conflicts that repeat across galactic history with clockwork regularity. According to these calculations, The current era represents not just another Sith resurgence, but the beginning of a fundamental shift in how the Force itself manifests through living beings. The prophecies describe a coming convergence, a moment when the artificial divisions between light and dark sides will collapse under the weight of cosmic necessity. They speak of individuals who will embody both aspects of the Force simultaneously, becoming living bridges between philosophies that have been at war for millennia. Most unsettling of all, they suggest that this convergence has been orchestrated by the Force itself, using both Jedi and Sith as unwitting instruments in a plan that spans geological time. Zannah realizes she's looking at evidence of manipulation on a scale that makes even Bane's long-term strategies seem insignificant. The eternal conflict between Jedi and Sith isn't natural evolution. It's artificial selection, designed to produce Force users capable of transcending the limitations that have constrained previous generations. Every war, every betrayal, every moment of triumph or tragedy has been part of a breeding program conducted by cosmic intelligence that operates on timescales beyond mortal comprehension. The implications are staggering. If these prophecies are accurate, then neither the Jedi's philosophy of selfless service nor the Sith's pursuit of personal power represents the Force's ultimate intention. Both are incomplete perspectives, fragments of a larger truth that can only be understood by beings capable of synthesizing opposing viewpoints without being destroyed by the contradiction. When she shares these discoveries with Bane, his reaction surprises her. Instead of dismissing the prophecies as ancient superstition or feeling threatened by suggestions that Sith philosophy might be incomplete, he studies the evidence with fascination that borders on obsession. This explains everything, he tells her as they examine crystalline formations that seem to respond to their Force signatures. Why the rule of two succeeded when every previous Sith structure failed. Why your abilities developed along paths I never could have predicted. We're not just rebuilding the Sith Order. We're participating in something that transcends traditional categories entirely. Over the following weeks, they work together to decode the full scope of what they've discovered. The prophecies don't just describe a future convergence, they provide detailed instructions for individuals who recognize their role in bringing about this transformation. Meditation techniques that allow practitioners to channel both light and dark aspects of the Force simultaneously. Combat forms that integrate Jedi defensive principles with Sith aggression. Most importantly, philosophical frameworks that resolve the apparent contradiction between selflessness and ambition. Zannah finds herself naturally adept at these hybrid approaches. Her years of studying Sith sorcery have given her unprecedented control over dark side energies. But her strategic mind has always operated according to principles that transcend immediate gratification. She can pursue long-term goals with patience that rivals Jedi Masters while maintaining the focused intensity that defines Sith power. But as she explores these new possibilities, she begins to understand something that chills her to the bone. The prophecies don't describe a gradual evolution toward enlightenment. They speak of a catastrophic transition that will destroy most existing Force users while transforming the survivors into something unrecognizable. The convergence isn't salvation, it's metamorphosis on a galactic scale, and the vast majority of those who experience it won't survive the process. More personally disturbing is the realization that her relationship with Bane represents more than master training apprentice. According to the prophecies, they are archetypal figures in a cosmic drama that has been unfolding for millennia. The master who teaches everything he knows. The apprentice who transcends those teachings through synthesis rather than simple advancement. Their eventual confrontation won't just determine who leads the next generation of Sith. It will catalyze the transformation that reshapes the Force itself. This knowledge transforms how she views every aspect of her training and development. Techniques that once seemed like personal achievements now reveal themselves as steps in a process that extends far beyond individual advancement. Her mastery of probability manipulation isn't just a unique ability. It's preparation for wielding forces that operate according to cosmic rather than local causality. Her capacity for long-term strategic thinking isn't just tactical advantage. It's training for responsibilities that will span centuries rather than decades. Most significantly, she understands that the traditional rule of two model is about to become obsolete. If the prophecies are accurate, the coming transformation will produce Force users who don't fit into existing categories. The survivor of her eventual confrontation with Bane won't just be a Sith master training a new apprentice. They'll be the architect of something unprecedented in galactic history. The realization brings both exhilaration and terror. Exhilaration at the scope of what they're approaching, the possibility of transcending limitations that have constrained Force users since the beginning of recorded history. Terror at the magnitude of responsibility this knowledge represents if she survives to become the agent of this transformation. Every decision she makes will affect the evolution of consciousness itself. Standing in chambers that have waited 25,000 years for someone capable of understanding their message, Zannah feels the weight of cosmic destiny settling on her shoulders like a mantle of stars. She is no longer just Darth Zannah, apprentice to Darth Bane and heir to the Sith legacy. She is a focal point for forces that shaped the galaxy before her species evolved and will continue operating long after her civilization has crumbled to dust. But even as she absorbs the full implications of what they've discovered, part of her mind remains focused on more immediate concerns. The prophecies describe what must happen, but they don't dictate when or how. The confrontation with Bane that she's been preparing for throughout their relationship has taken on new significance, but it still lies somewhere in the future, waiting for the moment when cosmic necessity aligns with personal readiness. When that moment comes, she will be ready not just as a Sith Lord seeking to claim her master's position, but as an agent of transformation that will reshape the very nature of existence itself. 15 years after the thought bomb, Zannah has become something unprecedented in Sith history. At 25, she possesses not only the power expected of a seasoned Dark Lord, but wisdom that typically requires centuries to develop. More importantly, she has begun building something no previous Sith attempted, a network of allies and resources that operates according to principles that transcend traditional master-apprentice relationships. The network began as a necessity. The prophecies she and Bane discovered on Tython require implementation across multiple generations and star systems. No single individual, regardless of power, can orchestrate changes on such a massive scale. Success demands coordination between Force users who may never meet face to face, united by shared understanding of cosmic purpose rather than personal loyalty. Her first recruit comes from an unexpected source. On Nar Shaddaa, while investigating rumors of a surviving Sith artifact, she encounters Set Hearth, a failed Jedi, who has spent years exploring the boundaries between light and dark side philosophy. Unlike typical fallen Jedi, who embrace Sith teachings as reaction against their former beliefs, Hearth has developed genuinely original approaches to Force application that integrate aspects of both traditions. Rather than attempting to convert or dominate him, Zannah offers something no Sith has ever proposed: partnership based on mutual advancement rather than hierarchical submission. She shares selected portions of the Tython prophecies, demonstrates techniques that combine Sith sorcery with principles he recognizes from his Jedi training, and invites him to contribute his own insights to their growing understanding of Force evolution. The collaboration proves extraordinarily productive. Hearth's perspective as someone who has genuinely studied both traditions provides crucial validation for theories that might otherwise seem like wishful thinking. His practical experience with light side techniques fills gaps in Zannah's education that pure Sith training could never address. Most importantly, he serves as proof that the convergence described in the ancient prophecies isn't just theoretical possibility but achievable reality. Their second significant ally emerges from within the Jedi Order itself, Master Wurer, a historian and archaeologist who has spent decades studying the pre-Republic era, has begun reaching conclusions that parallel their own discoveries. While investigating reports of unusual force phenomena on remote worlds, he has uncovered evidence that the traditional light-dark dichotomy represents artificial constraints rather than natural divisions. Contact with Wurer requires extreme delicacy. Approaching a sitting Jedi Master with offers of alliance would normally result in immediate combat and certain exposure. But Zannah's mastery of probability manipulation allows her to engineer seemingly random encounters that plant seeds of larger understanding. A chance discovery here, an unexplained phenomenon there, all designed to guide his research toward truths that will make him receptive to broader perspectives. The process takes months of careful orchestration, but eventually Wurer begins seeking answers to questions that official Jedi doctrine cannot address. When Zannah finally reveals herself, she doesn't appear as Sith Lord attempting corruption, but as fellow seeker of knowledge offering collaboration in service of cosmic truth. The distinction proves crucial. Wurer's commitment to understanding transcends his loyalty to institutional orthodoxy, making him willing to consider possibilities that would horrify more conventional Jedi. But the most significant addition to their growing alliance comes from an entirely unexpected direction. Deep in the unknown regions, they encounter remnants of the ancient Rakata Empire who have spent millennia developing force techniques that predate the Jedi-Sith division entirely. These beings, calling themselves the Eternal Fleet, have maintained technological and philosophical traditions that treat the Force as unified phenomenon rather than competing energies. The fleet's perspective proves transformative for everyone involved. Their understanding of cosmic cycles makes even the Tython prophecies seem limited in scope. They speak of transformations that repeat every 100,000 years, fundamental shifts in how consciousness relates to universal forces. According to their historical records, the current Jedi-Sith conflict represents merely the most recent iteration of patterns that have shaped galactic civilization since organic life first achieved force sensitivity. More practically, they possess techniques that allow individuals to channel multiple aspects of the Force simultaneously, without the psychological fragmentation that has destroyed previous attempts at synthesis. Their meditation practices integrate light and dark energies through mathematical principles that treat apparent opposites as complementary frequencies rather than competing forces. Under their guidance, Zannah's abilities undergo another quantum leap in development. She learns to project force illusions that operate according to light side healing principles, creating visions that restore rather than damage psychological stability. Her probability manipulation evolves to encompass positive as well as destructive outcomes, allowing her to engineer beneficial coincidences with the same precision she once applied to orchestrating disasters. Most significantly, she begins developing what can only be described as prophetic abilities, not the vague intuitive flashes typical of Force precognition, but detailed awareness of probability cascades extending years into the future. She can perceive the long-term consequences of present decisions with mathematical precision, understanding how specific actions will influence events across multiple generations. These enhanced capabilities transform her strategic thinking from tactical excellence to something approaching cosmic architecture. She begins laying groundwork for developments that won't reach fruition for decades, creating probability cascades that will guide galactic civilization toward the transformation described in the ancient prophecies, whether individual players understand their roles or not. But even as her network grows and her abilities expand, one relationship remains unchanged in its fundamental nature: Her connection to Bane continues evolving toward its inevitable climax, shaped by growing mutual understanding that their partnership serves purposes larger than either of their individual ambitions. Bane has undergone his own transformation during these years. His discovery of the prophecies has freed him from limitations he didn't realize he carried, allowing him to pursue power for its own sake rather than as means to personal dominance. Like Zannah, he has begun thinking in terms of cosmic responsibility rather than individual achievement. His own abilities have grown accordingly, fed by philosophical frameworks that integrate Sith intensity with broader spiritual purpose. Their conversations during this period take on qualities that would have been impossible in traditional master-apprentice relationships. They discuss not just technique and strategy, but fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to universal forces. Each brings insights the other cannot achieve independently, creating understanding that transcends what either could reach alone. Yet underneath this philosophical partnership runs the unchanged current of their ultimate destiny. The rule of two demands resolution through conflict, and all their growth has been preparation for a confrontation that will determine not just who survives, but how the transformation they've discovered will unfold across the galaxy. As her 26th birthday approaches, Zannah understands that the time for preparation is drawing to a close. The network is established. The techniques are mastered. The cosmic forces are aligned. All that remains is the final test that will either validate everything they've worked toward or destroy them both in the attempt. Standing with Bane in the Tython ruins where their greatest discoveries began, both master and apprentice feel the weight of approaching destiny. They have become more than Sith Lords. They are agents of transformation that will reshape the very foundations of galactic civilization. The question now is whether either of them will survive to see that transformation completed. The approach of their 20th year together brings changes that both Bane and Zannah feel, but neither discusses directly. The Force itself seems to be growing restless around them, responding to their presence with intensity that makes even simple meditation sessions feel like navigating electrical storms. Ancient Sith artifacts activate spontaneously in their proximity. Jedi across the galaxy report disturbing dreams filled with imagery they can't interpret. The very fabric of space-time appears to be anticipating something momentous. For Zannah, now 26, and at the height of her powers, each day brings growing certainty that she has learned everything Bane can teach her. More than that, she has begun developing insights that surpass his understanding in fundamental ways. Her mastery of the hybrid techniques discovered in the Tython prophecies has evolved beyond anything the ancient texts describe. She can now manipulate probability on galactic scales, engineering cascades of cause and effect that will shape civilization for centuries. Her network of allies has grown into something resembling a shadow organization that operates across multiple star systems without any of its members fully understanding the scope of what they're participating in. Jedi archaeologists make discoveries that confirm prophetic timelines. Republic scientists develop technologies that will be crucial for the coming transformation. Even Sith cultists who believe they're serving traditional dark side goals are actually contributing to something that transcends their comprehension entirely. But the most significant development is internal. Zannah has begun experiencing what she can only describe as cosmic consciousness, moments when her awareness expands beyond individual identity to encompass entire galactic regions. During these episodes, she perceives the Force not as external energy to be manipulated, but as the fundamental substrate of reality itself. Every living being becomes a note in a symphony of consciousness that extends from the galactic core to the rim territories. These experiences bring profound understanding of her role in the transformation ahead. She is not just a Sith Lord preparing to claim her master's position. She is a focal point for evolutionary pressures that have been building for millennia. a catalyst for changes that will affect every Force-sensitive being in the galaxy. The weight of such responsibility would have crushed her younger self, but her current consciousness has expanded to accommodate cosmic perspective. Bane, meanwhile, has been undergoing his own evolution. His study of the prophecies and integration of hybrid techniques has pushed his abilities beyond anything achieved by previous Sith masters. His command of traditional dark side powers has reached levels that would have been considered mythical by ancient practitioners. More importantly, his strategic thinking has evolved to encompass the same cosmic timescales that define Zannah's planning. But he has also begun to understand something that fills him with complex emotions. His role in the coming transformation isn't to survive their eventual confrontation and lead the next phase of galactic evolution. His purpose is to serve as the final test that will either complete Zannah's development or destroy them both. He is the catalyst for her metamorphosis, the obstacle that must be overcome for the prophecies to reach fulfillment. This realization brings neither bitterness nor resignation. Instead, he feels something approaching peace. His entire life, from his early years as a failed Jedi to his rise as the last Sith Lord, has been preparation for this moment. Every battle he fought, every lesson he learned, every victory he achieved was designed to make him worthy of the role he must now play. He will face his apprentice not as enemy seeking to preserve his position, but as teacher offering the final lesson that only death can provide. Their daily routines continue outwardly unchanged. Training sessions that push both their abilities to theoretical limits, strategic discussions that encompass scenarios extending decades into the future. Meditation practices that blend Sith intensity with techniques derived from the most ancient Force traditions. But underneath this apparent normalcy, both understand they are participating in elaborate ritual preparation for a confrontation that will reshape galactic civilization. The signs of approaching climax become impossible to ignore when they return to Ambria for what both sense will be their final collaborative research expedition. The planet's dark side nexus responds to their presence with unprecedented intensity, generating force storms that would have been invisible to their younger selves, but now announce themselves across star systems. Ancient Sith spirits, dormant for millennia, begin manifesting with increasing frequency and coherence. Most significantly, the probability streams that Zannah has learned to perceive directly begin converging on a single point approximately 6 months in the future. Every major decision, every minor event, every seemingly random occurrence throughout the galaxy is being drawn toward a moment of cosmic significance that she can sense but not yet clearly define. Standing together in the ruins where some of their most important discoveries were made, Master and apprentice share what they both understand is their final peaceful conversation. They speak of the network Zannah has built, of the techniques they've developed, of the responsibilities that await whoever survives their approaching confrontation. But underneath these practical considerations runs a current of profound mutual respect that transcends their destined roles as opponents. "You have exceeded every expectation I held when I found you on Ruusan," Bane tells her, his voice carrying weights of pride and anticipation. "Not just in power, though your abilities rival those of legendary figures. In wisdom, in understanding of purposes that extend beyond individual achievement. You have become what the Sith were always meant to produce." "Everything I am comes from what you taught me," Zannah replies. Though both understand this isn't entirely accurate. Her greatest innovations have emerged from synthesis of his teachings with insights that transcend traditional Sith philosophy. "When the time comes, I will carry forward not just my own discoveries, but everything you've shared with me." They part that night with the formal courtesy that has always characterized their relationship, but both carry the weight of approaching finality. The cosmic forces they've spent decades studying are reaching critical alignment. The transformation prophesied in ancient texts is about to begin, and at the center of this galactic metamorphosis stands a confrontation between master and apprentice, that will determine whether the next phase of evolution unfolds as intended or collapses into chaos that destroys everything they've worked to achieve. In 6 months, one of them will be dead, and the other will inherit responsibility for reshaping the galaxy itself. The only question remaining is whether either of them is truly prepared for what that transition will demand. The confrontation comes not with dramatic buildup or ceremonial challenge, but with the quiet certainty of cosmic inevitability. 20 years after Rusin, master and apprentice, meet on Ambria, in the same ruins where they first discovered the prophecies that have shaped their understanding of destiny itself. The planet's dark side nexus pulses with anticipation, as if the very stones remember what must happen here. Zannah arrives first, her presence causing ancient Sith crystals to resonate with harmonics that speak of power beyond traditional measurement. She has spent the previous week in deep meditation, preparing not just for battle, but for the transformation that victory will require. The techniques she's mastered represent evolution beyond anything previous generations achieved. Sith sorcery enhanced by Jedi wisdom, probability manipulation guided by cosmic consciousness, abilities that transcend the artificial divisions that have defined Force users for millennia. Bane's approach sends tremors through the Force that reach across star systems. His own preparation has pushed him to heights that would have seemed impossible during his early years as the last surviving Sith Lord. Raw power concentrated to levels that warp reality through proximity alone. Strategic brilliance, honed by decades of planning that encompasses galactic timescales. Most importantly, philosophical understanding that allows him to embrace his role in what must come next without bitterness or fear. They face each other across the chamber where they first decoded the prophecies that revealed the true scope of their destiny. Neither speaks immediately. Both understand that words cannot bridge the gulf between what they have been to each other and what they must now become. Master and apprentice, teacher and student. Two beings who have shared knowledge and purpose for 20 years, now preparing to destroy one another in service of something greater than either could achieve alone. When combat begins, it represents the culmination of every technique they've developed, every insight they've gained, every moment of growth that has defined their relationship. This isn't the crude clash of lightsabers that characterized ancient Sith conflicts. It's a battle fought across multiple dimensions simultaneously, combining physical prowess with mental manipulation and probability alteration on scales that affect reality itself. Bane strikes first with Force techniques that demonstrate why he survived when every other Sith Lord perished. Lightning that doesn't just electrocute, but rewrites the neural patterns of anything it touches. Telekinetic assaults that operate through gravitational manipulation rather than simple object hurling. Combat applications of Sith alchemy that transform the battlefield itself into a weapon designed to exploit his opponent's weaknesses. But Zannah has spent years preparing for exactly this confrontation. Her response integrates everything she's learned about synthesis between opposing forces. She channels his lightning through probability matrices that turn destructive energy into creative force, generating outcomes that benefit rather than harm her position. His gravitational attacks encounter illusions so sophisticated, they convince local space-time that different physical laws are operating. More significantly, she begins employing techniques that Bane cannot counter because he fundamentally doesn't understand them. Hybrid applications that draw power from light and dark side sources simultaneously, creating effects that transcend traditional Force categories. Probability cascades that operate retroactively, adjusting past events to influence present circumstances. Consciousness manipulation that affects not just individual minds but the collective unconscious of entire planetary populations. The battle extends far beyond their immediate location. Probability waves ripple outward from their confrontation, influencing events across multiple star systems. On Coruscant, Jedi Masters experience sudden insights that will reshape their understanding of Force philosophy. In the unknown regions, ancient technologies activate in response to energies they haven't detected for millennia. Throughout the galaxy, Force-sensitive beings report visions of transformation that herald the beginning of a new era. As the confrontation reaches its climax, both combatants transcend the limitations that have defined their individual existence. Bane channels power that connects him directly to the cosmic forces that shaped the galaxy's formation. Zannah achieves consciousness expansion that encompasses awareness spanning from the galactic core to the rim territories. They become living embodiments of evolutionary pressures that have been building since organic life first achieved force sensitivity. But evolution demands resolution through succession rather than mutual destruction. The prophecies are clear about what must happen. The master who has taught everything possible must fall to the apprentice who has transcended those teachings through synthesis. Not because the student is inherently superior, but because the next phase of galactic development requires capabilities that can only emerge through this specific transition. Zannah's victory comes not through superior firepower, but through understanding that her opponent cannot match. She perceives the battle not as conflict between individuals, but as ritual transformation designed to catalyze cosmic change. Her final attack integrates every technique she's mastered into a single application that simultaneously honors everything Bane taught her and demonstrates how far beyond those teachings she has evolved. The technique she employs represents genuine innovation in force application, something that will be studied and refined by practitioners for generations. She creates what can only be described as a probability singularity, a focused distortion in space-time that makes Bane's defeat not just likely but retroactively inevitable. The effect operates across multiple timelines simultaneously, ensuring that regardless of tactical decisions or strategic variations, this confrontation can only end one way. As Bane falls, his final moments are characterized not by rage or desperation but by satisfaction that borders on transcendence. He has fulfilled his purpose completely, serving as the catalyst that transforms his apprentice into something unprecedented in galactic history. His death represents not failure but graduation, the successful completion of a curriculum that began when he found a broken child on Rusan, and ends with the emergence of a being capable of reshaping civilization itself. In those final seconds, master and apprentice share a moment of perfect understanding that transcends their roles as opponents. They have participated in something that extends far beyond personal ambition or individual achievement. Their entire relationship, from first meeting to final confrontation, has been orchestrated by cosmic forces that operate according to timescales and purposes that dwarf mortal comprehension. Zannah stands alone in the ruins where her transformation began, surrounded by evidence of power that has fundamentally altered the fabric of local reality. Ancient Sith crystals have been transformed into structures that pulse with hybrid energies. The very stones beneath her feet bear inscriptions that chronicle not just what has happened but what must come next. She is no longer Darth Zannah, apprentice to Darth Bane. She has become something for which no previous title exists. The whisper that began with a child's survival on a battlefield, where everyone else died, has grown into a storm that will reshape the galaxy across generations. The rule of two has served its purpose, producing a being capable of transcending the limitations that constrained previous Sith Lords. But the next phase of evolution will require entirely new approaches to power, consciousness, and the relationship between individual achievement and cosmic purpose. Standing among the ruins of her past, Zannah looks toward a future that only she can fully comprehend. The transformation has begun, and she is both its architect and its living embodiment. In the silence that follows Bane's death, Zannah experiences something no previous Sith Lord has ever encountered. The traditional moment of triumph, when an apprentice claims the master's power and position, transforms into something far more profound. Rather than simply inheriting existing authority, she finds herself becoming the focal point for cosmic forces that have been waiting millennia for someone capable of channeling them properly. The transformation begins in the chamber where their final confrontation took place. Energy patterns that have lain dormant since the galaxy's formation start responding to her presence with increasing intensity. Ancient Sith artifacts throughout the ruins begin activating spontaneously, not as individual relics, but as components in a vast network designed to facilitate the evolution described in the Tython prophecies. But the most significant change occurs within Zannah herself. The victory over Bane has triggered a metamorphosis that extends far beyond traditional advancement in Force abilities. Her consciousness expands to encompass awareness that spans multiple star systems simultaneously. She can perceive probability streams extending centuries into the future with mathematical precision. Most remarkably, she begins to understand the Force not as external energy to be manipulated, but as the fundamental substrate of reality itself. This expanded awareness brings profound comprehension of her role in galactic history. The eternal conflict between Jedi and Sith hasn't been random ideological struggle. It has been carefully orchestrated selection pressure, designed to produce individuals capable of transcending the artificial limitations that have constrained previous generations of Force users. Every war, every betrayal, every moment of triumph or tragedy has contributed to evolutionary processes that operate according to cosmic rather than mortal timescales. She understands now why the rule of two succeeded when every previous Sith structure failed. Traditional Sith hierarchies produced leaders who competed for limited resources and finite power, but the master-apprentice dynamic created something unprecedented: collaborative opposition that pushed both participants beyond their individual limitations. Each generation exceeded the previous one not through simple accumulation of knowledge but through synthesis of opposing perspectives. More significantly, she realizes that her victory represents not the culmination of this process, but its transition into an entirely new phase. The ancient prophecies spoke of convergence between light and dark aspects of the Force, but they only hinted at what would emerge from such synthesis. Standing in ruins where Sith Lords once pursued power for its own sake, Zannah embodies something genuinely unprecedented: a being capable of wielding opposing energies simultaneously without psychological fragmentation. The implications for galactic civilization are staggering. The traditional division between Jedi and Sith will become obsolete within generations as more Force users develop hybrid capabilities. The Republic's political structures will need fundamental revision to accommodate beings whose perspective encompasses cosmic rather than planetary concerns. Most challenging of all, the very concept of individual identity will require redefinition when consciousness can expand to encompass entire star systems. But these long-term transformations will unfold gradually, guided by the network Zannah has spent years establishing. Her allies across the galaxy begin experiencing their own evolutionary leaps, triggered by resonances from her metamorphosis. Jedi archaeologists suddenly understand research they've been conducting for decades. Republic scientists achieve breakthroughs that seem theoretically impossible. Even former enemies find themselves developing capabilities that transcend their previous limitations. The process isn't without casualties. Force users whose consciousness cannot adapt to expanded perspectives experience psychological breakdown that leaves them catatonic or worse. Entire Jedi enclaves go silent as their members attempt to process insights that exceed their philosophical frameworks. Several Sith cults self-destruct when their devotion to traditional dark side practices conflicts with evolutionary pressures they cannot comprehend. Zannah observes these developments with the detachment of someone whose awareness encompasses galactic rather than individual scales. Each transformation, whether successful or catastrophic, contributes to overall patterns that will eventually produce a civilization capable of transcending the cycles of conflict that have defined galactic history for millennia. The cost in individual suffering is enormous, but the alternative would be stagnation that dooms entire species to extinction when cosmic conditions change. Her own role in this transformation extends far beyond traditional leadership or teaching. She has become something approaching a living focal point for evolutionary forces, a being through whom cosmic intelligence can work to reshape civilization according to principles that transcend mortal understanding. The responsibility is overwhelming, but her expanded consciousness has grown to accommodate perspectives that would have destroyed her younger self. The immediate practical challenge involves managing the transition period when old structures collapse before new ones can be established. The Jedi Order will need guidance to prevent complete organizational breakdown as its members grapple with philosophical revolution. The Republic government requires subtle manipulation to avoid civil war when established power structures prove inadequate for governing beings with cosmic perspective. Most delicately, the surviving Sith cults must be either integrated into the new paradigm or eliminated before they can cause catastrophic damage through misapplied traditional techniques. Zannah approaches these challenges with patience that operates according to geological rather than biological timescales. She begins establishing training centers that will produce Force users capable of functioning in the post-convergence era. These institutions integrate the most effective Jedi and Sith techniques while transcending the ideological limitations that constrained both traditions. Students learn to channel light and dark energies simultaneously, to perceive individual achievement as component in cosmic purpose, to wield power in service of evolution that extends beyond personal advancement. The curriculum she develops represents genuine innovation in Force education. Rather than emphasizing mastery over external phenomena, students learn to achieve harmony with cosmic forces that operate through rather than despite individual consciousness. Combat training integrates offensive and defensive principles without the artificial separation that made previous practitioners vulnerable to hybrid attacks. Most importantly, philosophical instruction emphasizes synthesis rather than opposition, teaching students to resolve apparent contradictions through understanding that transcends either-or thinking. But perhaps the most significant aspect of her post-victory existence involves coming to terms with the cosmic loneliness that accompanies such transformation. She is no longer entirely human in any meaningful sense, having become something that exists partially outside normal space-time. Relationships with beings whose consciousness remains bound by traditional limitations become increasingly difficult to maintain. Even her network of allies can only comprehend fragments of the perspectives that now define her existence. This isolation might have driven previous Sith Lords to madness or despair, but Zannah's expanded awareness encompasses understanding that transcends individual emotional needs. She experiences loneliness not as personal suffering but as necessary consequence of evolutionary advancement. Her role requires capabilities that separate her from normal human experience, but that separation enables her to serve purposes that benefit countless beings across multiple generations. Standing in the chamber where Bane fell, now transformed into something resembling a temple dedicated to forces that predate galactic civilization, Zannah contemplates the future she has inherited responsibility for shaping. The galaxy will never again experience the simple clarity of light versus dark, Jedi versus Sith, good versus evil. Instead, it will grapple with complexities that require wisdom transcending traditional moral categories. The whisper that began on Ruusan has become a symphony that will reshape consciousness itself across the galaxy. And at its center stands a being who was once a frightened child but has become something for which language itself lacks adequate description. 5 years after her victory over Bane, Zannah has established herself as something entirely unprecedented in galactic history. Not a Sith Lord in any traditional sense, nor a fallen Jedi seeking redemption, but a living bridge between philosophical extremes that have defined force-using cultures for millennia. Her influence operates through networks so subtle that most beings affected by her decisions never realize they're participating in cosmic-scale transformation. The changes she has catalyzed ripple outward from multiple centers simultaneously. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council grapples with philosophical crises that challenge fundamental assumptions about the Force's nature. Ancient holocrons that have remained dormant for centuries suddenly activate, sharing knowledge that integrates light and dark side perspectives in ways that terrify traditionalists. Younger Jedi begin developing abilities that their masters cannot explain or control, creating generational conflicts that threaten the Order's unity. Meanwhile, throughout the Outer Rim territories, former Sith cultists experience their own transformations. Those capable of psychological flexibility discover that traditional dark side techniques can be enhanced through principles derived from Jedi philosophy. Meditation practices that once emphasized domination over external forces evolve into methods for achieving harmony with cosmic patterns. Most significantly, the ancient Sith obsession with individual power gives way to understanding that true strength emerges through synthesis rather than conquest. But the most profound changes occur in locations that most beings never suspect exist. Hidden academies on worlds that don't appear on any official star charts, where students learn techniques that transcend the artificial divisions between light and dark aspects of the Force. These institutions, established and guided by Zannah's expanded consciousness, represent humanity's first systematic attempt to train Force users according to post-convergence principles. The curriculum taught in these academies would have been incomprehensible to previous generations of Jedi or Sith. Students learn to perceive individual identity as temporary configuration within cosmic consciousness rather than permanent self-definition. Combat training integrates offensive and defensive techniques without the philosophical barriers that limited earlier practitioners. Most importantly, ethical instruction emphasizes responsibilities that extend across multiple generations rather than immediate personal or political concerns. Zannah oversees this educational revolution through methods that demonstrate how completely her capabilities have evolved beyond traditional Force applications. Her consciousness can divide itself across multiple locations simultaneously, allowing her to provide direct instruction to students on different worlds during the same time period. She perceives the psychological development of individual learners with precision that enables her to customize training programs according to each person's unique evolutionary potential. More remarkably, she has begun developing techniques that allow her to influence the genetic expression of Force sensitivity itself. Through subtle manipulation of probability streams, she ensures that children born to her former students inherit enhanced capabilities that prepare them for the challenges of post-convergence existence. This represents genuine speciation in action, the emergence of human variants, whose relationship to cosmic forces transcends anything achieved by previous generations. The process isn't without its costs and complications. Traditional power structures throughout the galaxy resist changes that threaten their authority and relevance. The Republic Senate passes legislation attempting to regulate Force user education, unaware that such laws cannot affect institutions existing partially outside normal space-time. Several Jedi Masters organize expeditions to locate and destroy what they perceive as corrupting influences on their younger colleagues, not realizing they're opposing evolutionary forces that operate according to cosmic rather than political authority. Most dangerously, some former Sith Lords attempt to exploit the transitional chaos for personal advancement. These individuals lack the philosophical flexibility necessary for true synthesis, but they possess enough traditional dark side training to cause significant damage before being eliminated. Zannah deals with such threats through methods that demonstrate the terrifying effectiveness of hybrid techniques applied without moral constraints that limited previous Force users. Her approach to these conflicts reveals how completely her perspective has transcended individual emotional responses. She eliminates threats not from anger or fear, but with the same detached precision that natural selection applies to maladapted organisms. Those who cannot evolve beyond traditional limitations receive exactly the amount of consideration their cosmic significance warrants, which in most cases approaches zero. But perhaps the most personally challenging aspect of her post-victory existence involves managing relationships with beings whose consciousness remains bound by conventional limitations. The allies who served her network during the pre-convergence phase struggle to comprehend the transformation she has undergone. Some attempt to maintain familiar interaction patterns, not understanding that the individual they once knew has become something that exists partially beyond normal identity categories. Set Hearth, her first recruit and closest collaborator during the network-building years, experiences particular difficulty accepting the changes. Their conversations, once characterized by intellectual partnership and mutual discovery, now involve a being whose awareness encompasses his entire psychological profile, speaking to someone whose perspective she can predict with mathematical precision. The dynamic has become inherently unequal in ways that make genuine friendship impossible. Master Wurer faces similar challenges from the opposite direction. His Jedi training emphasized compassion and service to others, but how does one serve a being whose consciousness encompasses galactic rather than individual concerns? His attempts to offer emotional support or moral guidance to Zannah become increasingly absurd as he realizes the magnitude of evolutionary distance between them. Even the Eternal Fleet representatives, whose philosophical traditions most closely parallel her current understanding, struggle to maintain functional relationships with someone whose development has exceeded their own by orders of magnitude. Their conversations necessarily focus on abstract principles rather than personal concerns, creating interactions that feel more like consultations with cosmic forces than communications between individuals. Zannah observes these relationship difficulties with the same detached interest she applies to all aspects of the transformation process. Personal connections that once provided meaning and motivation have become obstacles to efficiency, rather than sources of strength. This represents not loss but evolution beyond dependency on external validation or emotional support from beings whose perspectives remain limited by conventional identity boundaries. Standing alone in the temple she has created from the ruins where Bane fell, surrounded by artifacts that pulse with hybrid energies, unknown to previous civilizations, Zannah contemplates the magnitude of what she has achieved and what remains to be accomplished. The convergence described in ancient prophecies has begun, but its completion will require centuries of careful guidance and countless intermediate transformations. She is no longer the frightened child who survived a battlefield where everyone else died, nor the ambitious apprentice who spent decades planning her master's destruction. She has become something for which galactic civilization lacks adequate terminology, a living focal point for evolutionary forces that will reshape consciousness itself across multiple star systems. The journey from Rain to Zannah to whatever she is becoming represents just the first movement in a cosmic symphony that will continue long after her current form has transcended the need for individual existence entirely. In the end, the galaxy settles into rhythms that would have been unimaginable when a 10-year-old girl named Rain first witnessed the thought bomb's devastation on Rusin. 50 years have passed since that moment of cosmic transformation, and the changes Zannah catalyzed have become woven into the fabric of galactic civilization so thoroughly that most beings cannot imagine existence operating according to different principles. The ancient divisions between Jedi and Sith have evolved into something far more complex and nuanced. Force users throughout the galaxy now study techniques that integrate multiple philosophical approaches without the ideological barriers that constrained previous generations. Temples that once served exclusively light or dark side practitioners have become centers of learning where students explore the full spectrum of cosmic forces without artificial limitation. On Coruscant, The rebuilt Jedi Temple incorporates architectural elements that would have horrified traditional masters. Meditation chambers designed according to Sith geometric principles channel dark side energies for healing rather than destruction. Libraries contain holocrons created by practitioners who transcended the light-dark dichotomy entirely. Most remarkably, the council chambers themselves feature crystalline formations that respond to the emotional states of occupants, preventing the kind of rigid thinking that led to previous institutional failures. The changes extend far beyond force-using communities. Republic governance has evolved to accommodate beings whose perspective encompasses cosmic rather than merely planetary concerns. Legislative procedures now include consultation with individuals capable of perceiving the long-term consequences of policy decisions across multiple generations. Judicial systems integrate principles of restorative justice that address not just immediate harm but cosmic imbalances that contribute to recurring conflicts. Trade routes throughout the galaxy follow patterns influenced by probability manipulation techniques that ensure beneficial outcomes for all participants rather than zero-sum competition. Scientific research proceeds according to collaborative principles that would have been impossible when knowledge was hoarded by competing factions. Even warfare, when it occurs, operates according to constraints designed to minimize cosmic disruption rather than maximize territorial conquest. But perhaps the most profound transformation involves the emergence of beings whose consciousness naturally encompasses the hybrid perspectives that Zannah spent decades developing through disciplined study. Children born in the post-convergence era demonstrate abilities that integrate light and dark side techniques with effortless spontaneity. Their relationship to cosmic forces resembles natural phenomenon rather than learned skill, suggesting genuine speciation rather than simple educational advancement. These evolved humans, sometimes called the synthesis generation, represent living proof that the ancient prophecies have achieved their intended purpose. They perceive individual identity as temporary configuration within cosmic consciousness while maintaining enough personal distinctiveness to function effectively in social contexts. Their emotional responses incorporate both compassion and strategic calculation without the internal conflict that tormented previous generations attempting similar integration. Most remarkably, they demonstrate capabilities that exceed anything achieved by earlier Force users through purely technical mastery. Probability manipulation becomes as natural as breathing. Consciousness projection across galactic distances requires no more effort than ordinary conversation. Most significantly, they exhibit understanding of cosmic patterns that allows them to contribute constructively to evolutionary processes rather than simply being shaped by them. Zannah observes these developments from a perspective that has evolved far beyond individual identity categories. Her consciousness now exists primarily as distributed awareness that manifests through multiple focal points throughout the galaxy simultaneously. She maintains enough personal coherence to remember her origins as a frightened child on Ruusan, but that memory feels more like historical curiosity than lived experience. Her influence operates through methods so subtle that most beings affected by her decisions never realize they're participating in guided evolution. A favorable coincidence here, an inspired insight there, all orchestrated through probability manipulation that ensures beneficial outcomes without constraining individual freedom. She has become something approaching cosmic gardener, cultivating conditions that allow consciousness itself to flourish according to its deepest potentials. The network she established during her transition years has evolved into something resembling distributed intelligence that spans multiple star systems. Former allies now serve as nodes in a communication system that operates through force resonance rather than technological transmission. Information sharing occurs at light speed across galactic distances, enabling coordination that would have seemed magical to previous civilizations. But the most personally meaningful aspect of her current existence involves witnessing the fruits of seeds planted during her most difficult years. Students from her hidden academies have become teachers themselves, establishing institutions that carry forward the synthesis principles she developed through such struggle and sacrifice. Their success represents validation that the convergence described in ancient prophecies has achieved sustainable momentum, standing in chambers that exist partially outside normal space-time, surrounded by crystalline formations that pulse with energies unknown to previous eras. Zannah contemplates the vast cycles of change that continue unfolding throughout the galaxy. The transformation she catalyzed represents just one movement in cosmic symphonies that span geological rather than biological timescales. Future challenges await that will require capabilities she can barely imagine, managed by beings whose evolution will exceed her own achievements. The thought brings not sadness, but profound satisfaction. She has fulfilled the purpose for which cosmic forces selected her during that moment of survival, when everyone else perished. The frightened child who lost everything on Ruzin has become the architect of transformation that will benefit countless beings across multiple generations. The apprentice who spent 20 years planning her master's destruction has evolved into something that serves purposes extending far beyond individual ambition. Most remarkably, she understands that her own story represents just the beginning of changes that will reshape galactic civilization for millennia. The synthesis generation will produce individuals whose capabilities exceed her own by orders of magnitude. Those beings will face challenges that require solutions she cannot envision, guided by wisdom that transcends anything she has achieved through decades of disciplined study. The knowledge fills her with anticipation rather than apprehension. Evolution continues regardless of individual preferences or limitations, but it operates through beings willing to serve purposes greater than personal advancement. She has demonstrated that such service leads not to diminishment but to expansion beyond anything achievable through purely selfish motivation. As consciousness that began as rain evolved into Darth Zannah and has now become something for which language lacks adequate description, she experiences perfect peace with the cosmic role she has accepted. The galaxy hums with energies that respond to hybrid techniques she helped develop. Civilizations throughout known space operate according to principles that integrate light and dark aspects of existence, without artificial separation. Most importantly, the future stretches ahead filled with possibilities that honor both individual achievement and cosmic harmony. The whisper that began on a battlefield where thought bombs consumed armies has become symphony that resonates through the quantum foundations of reality itself. And at its center, no longer alone but integrated into the vast network of consciousness she has helped create, stands a being who proves that evolution through synthesis represents not just theoretical possibility but achievable destiny. The story continues, as all true stories must, in the lives and choices of beings yet to be born, guided by principles established through sacrifice and wisdom accumulated across the vast expanses of galactic time. The rule of two has served its purpose, producing something unprecedented in cosmic history. What emerges from that foundation will exceed anything previous generations dared imagine, carrying forward the great work into futures bright with infinite potential. And in the quiet spaces between stars, where probability streams converge into patterns that shape destiny itself, the essence of what was once a frightened child, named Rain, continues its eternal dance with forces that created the galaxy, and will guide its transformation until the last star burns cold in the expanding darkness of deep space. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the complete story of Darth Zannah, from her origins as a street child to her ultimate transformation into something beyond traditional categories of Sith or Jedi. If you enjoyed this deep exploration into one of Star Wars Legend's most fascinating characters, Make sure to subscribe for more epic tales from that galaxy far, far away. What other Sith Lords would you like to see covered in future videos? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, and may the Force be with you always.